Young people are seeing real change from their ideas, not to discount the expertise of organisations and services that exist in our communities, because they definitely have a lot that needs to be actioned and said for young people. But it's also not to discount the fact that young people know what they need better than anyone.
Someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s isn't able to put themselves completely in a young person's shoes and see the world through their eyes. We have to have their input. They have so much to offer, so many valuable ideas, so many insights. No one knows what their experience is like being a young person better than them.
If the fear is it's going to add more to my workload by letting our young people do this, don't let it add more to your workload. Give them more responsibility, give them more trust, overestimate them more so then they can actually believe in them.
Podclass acknowledges the traditional and true custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We're grateful to be here.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you.
When the students start to riot,
I'll be here for you.
even if your coffee is gone cold,
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello and welcome back to Podclass. I am your host, Will, with my friends Amanda and Sky.
Hello.
How are you both?
So good. How are you, Wilson?
Tremendous, because this is the one of the power of student voice.
We know that this has been something that you have been so passionate about your whole life. And in fact, it's like, was the beginning of Weiler? Was your passion for
literally,
hearing
it's like why
student
don't all
voice?
young people know their power and the power of their voice, which indirectly through a lot of different ways ended up with Weiler that we have today, Youth Leadership Academy in Australia.
And it's also what Weiler does now is you help support student voice in like multiple areas.
Yeah, very randomly in all different parts of the world, Australia, but most recently we'll
Soon to be the world.
soon to be the world. We have done some wild youth voice stuff, but most recently we were in Broome and they're about to launch their next 4 years of their youth strategy as a local council. And we went up there and did a bunch of consultation with the young people, and I've always said that the way that consultation should be done with young people is that co-design process of them actually talking about, discussing, brainstorming, workshopping together. We had 70 young people in the room from the 2 different schools, and they were rotating through these different stations, answering questions, having conversations. But the most powerful part of it was them realizing that this is literally informing a document that has accountability for what the next 3 or 4 years of young people look like for Broome.
And I mean, you say it all the time, there's too many conversations about young people without young people. And this is a prime example of actually putting student voice and young people's voices at the centre of what is going to be happening in that region.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, regardless of if it's young people, whatever community you're a part of, we're going to get frustrated if people are making decisions about us without us, right?
And I feel like this episode is really timely because to me it feels like we've hit a real tipping point. You know, we've had youth advisory boards around for a while and we've had kind of this anecdotal concept of co-design and youth voice popping around for a while. And I think we're really starting to see that young people, local councils, organisations, schools can no longer say that they're co-designing if they're just like getting a few opinions and then doing nothing about it.
Well, it's like, it's a bunch of BS, really. It's
Yeah.
100%. It's become another buzzword. It's just become
Literally,
this
I
thing
think,
that's
yeah.
like, we do co-design and we make sure that we consult with young people to inform our strategies or our plans. And it's like, are you? Which young people? Where?
Yeah, and I think that's the tipping point is, yes, we've had them, we've heard youth voice for such a long time. The tipping point is now we have a level of accountability of young people being like, okay, show us. We want to see how it's done. Because I think for too long it's been like SRC teams or student leadership teams with schools being like, it's just a fundraising group or it's just a volunteering group where there's a sausage sizzle.
Well, it's like, it's tokenistic, right? When it's like
100%.
that, it's a tick a box thing. It's like, oh, students were involved in this initiative, so it was student led. Tick. And it's like, well, no, who was the person actually making the decisions and doing all of that stuff? And normally it might be the adults or the teachers or whoever it is that's supporting them rather than the students themselves.
And so today we're going to chat about a few things. We're going to chat about how we can meaningfully capture student voice and why we need to be actually putting it into action, and also the benefit to young people of capturing their voice and then actioning their voice, because the ownership around that is just wild. I mean, I know Sky and I, like, we've done a lot of work, and Will, you've been up with us as well. We are really blessed to run some youth leadership projects in the Northern Territory, and some of them are entirely grounded in student voice and co-design. One most recently in November, we ran in West Arnhem Land, and what that did was it gathered high school students from all of the big communities in West Arnhem Land, all of the Indigenous communities. And what we did was we went through a process of really eliciting with the young people, what is it that young people in your community need? Where are the gaps? And how could you fulfill that? And it's a 3-day process that's like involves leadership and teamwork and eliciting voice. And at the end of it, what they do is they present to the local council, the state council, some federal members as well. They present what young people need. And in November, it was so powerful to see that within a fortnight, the mayor of the region, the mayor of the region had gone to multiple of those communities, had sat on those interagency and local government meetings, and had invited the students to come and present to their local members.
Well, it's just sending such an incredible message to young people as well when adults, councils, mayors or whatever put young people in these positions to have that ownership, to have that autonomy over what is happening for them.
And now those young people are seeing real change from their ideas. And I think, you know, it's not to discount the expertise of organisations and services that exist in our communities, because they definitely have a lot that needs to be actioned and said for young people. But it's also not to discount the fact that young people know what they need better than anyone. But that doesn't mean they're going to come knocking down our door saying, here's what we need. We need to provide the structures and the support that guide them to find that.
And when we do that, we're more likely to then see them start to knock on doors and ask for it, right? Because they've seen it, and now they've also seen that other people want to hear what young people young people have to say. And they're now given the tools to actually do it. So now they have a framework for the next time that they have an idea that they can actually start to use their voice more too.
And it's this flow and effect, right? If we're doing that with this generation, and then their younger peers are seeing them, and then they're going to be more likely to step up and into those positions to have a voice. And I think too, it's also like not only sending the message that they matter, that they're important, that their voice is really essential, but it's super, super empowering. And it's saying 100%. Like, you're important and this is important to us. It's actually listening and allowing them to take action and have ownership.
And I think if we completely take out even the student element of it and just understand that, like, when we have a say as individuals, when we have a say within work, when we have a say within our school or wherever we like to hang out, it's like that voice that we get gives us a level of ownership over it. And that does the same with our students as well.
Yeah. And I think we have to acknowledge, you know, as people listening today and for ourselves, that just because we are maybe setting up environments where young people can share their voice, it doesn't mean we can act on every idea. And that's just a fact. But what we do once we've captured that voice, what we do next, you know, some things we might be able to act on and some things we might not. But I really think the responsibility sits with us. If we've asked and we've elicited, the responsibility sits with us to return to that student and to say, hey, just letting you know, we loved your idea. For X, Y, and Z reason, it's not something we can do right now, but please keep coming to us with your ideas. We would love your support because the board or the principal or the whatever has agreed that we actually start with this idea first, but we need your help for that.
As opposed to the disempowering alternative, which is like, oh, that's a great idea, but yeah, no, sorry, it's not for us, so we can't do anything with it. Hearing that as a young person, one, you're not feeling valued, you're not feeling listened to, you're not feeling respected. And this is like their future. We are creating that, and they need to be 100% part of that process.
And a step before, like even worse than that, is no response at all, right? A young person has gone to all the effort of providing you with the data, their thoughts, their feelings, and then not having almost the humility to be able to respond happens so often. We work in so many schools. It's like we have these ideas, but nobody ever responds to us. We just get no's or we just don't get answers.
And I think it kind of speaks to that narrative, which we would love to move away from, and that is underestimating young people. They have so much to offer, so many valuable ideas, so many insights. Like no one knows what their experience is like being a young person better than them because they are the young person living that experience every day. Someone who's like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s isn't able to put themselves completely in a young person's shoes and see the world through their eyes. We have to have their input.
And like even on the underestimating thing, it's like if the fear is it's going to add more to my workload by letting our young people do this, don't let it add more to your workload. Give them more responsibility, give them more trust, overestimate them more so then they can actually believe in them and have that conversation. Be like, I'm really trying to let you lead this, but I need your support in actually leading it too.
Yeah. And I think this generation will be so open to that. And it's absolutely no coincidence that we're seeing a tipping point and we're seeing more accountability with Gen Z at the forefront, because we know Gen Z are values driven. Their mission for social change and advocacy is stronger than any previous generation. It's not being driven by leadership and by schools and by local councils. Gen Z are like lit up for creating change, and they're the reason that we're being held accountable. And so they're ready to step up and take on the challenge.
Even in the wilder world, I know might not look it, but I am getting old. I'm 22 now, and the reflection that we had probably 2 years ago, and it's been in the process for the last 2, let's say, is we've just relaunched our youth advisory board, simply to be able to better advise us on our programs that we're creating, because we're supporting young people aged from 10 all the way up until 25, except we're not in the school anymore. We're not experiencing it like a young person. So it's so important for us to not just be standing up here and sitting behind some microphones and be like, student voice matters, when we're not doing it ourselves. And that's always been, for me, yes, I'm 22, I'd be considered young, but we're not in school. We know that the rate of change has accelerated so much in the last 5 years, right?
Yeah, and I think even if we take the example of your youth advisory board, that just so exciting to be relaunched in January this year, the chairperson of your youth advisory board is a WYLAR alum.
Yeah.
They attended a WYLAR conference some 18 months ago, and then they were really motivated. They put themselves out there and asked for volunteer opportunities and to come out, and now they're the chair of the youth advisory board. They've just finished year 12 and this is their first year, attending university, and they're opening up. They're so passionate about engaging other young people, and I think it just goes to show that when a young person steps forward with an idea or with a request or with a curiosity, if we can lean in, if that young person had have come up and said, oh, I'm really interested in this, like, can I help with something? And they would have gotten shut down, we wouldn't be here, and they wouldn't be the chair of the youth advisory board. And so leaning into those moments is a gift, and it's really our responsibility to do that.
And I think these conversations are great, and that's an incredible example. We also have to be really mindful that giving student voice doesn't just mean giving voice and giving platform to the students that have the loudest voice or the ones that do come forward the most. And I've been in countless, maybe it's running a workshop as a facilitator, or we've gone and observed that. And maybe it is that young person who's sitting at the back corner and they might be quietly scribbling or taking notes and not really speak up at all throughout a workshop or a presentation, but that their mind is ticking over with ideas and they've got something to add or to contribute. So we also have to, in this student voice space, be considering how do we elicit and hear from these young people who maybe don't have the certainty or the confidence to come up and raise their voice without that encouragement and support.
Yeah. And we have this, so a part of an activity that we do with student councils in schools is we do how do you communicate with your community, which is like, generally a student council is their responsibility is to represent the other young people in the school, and the conversations are how are we engaging other young people and how do we make sure that they feel safe to actually be able to come with us. And then part number 3 is how do they know that they can, because it's like suggestion box in the staff room, but no one ever fills it out because no one knows it's there, or they don't think it's being valued.
And I think if we're going to draw a comparison here, as teachers, we all know what it's like to collect data, to test students and collect data. And we also all know what it's like to collate that data and report on that data and then go, well, how are we using this data to inform teaching and learning? And when it comes to youth voice, it's exactly the same. If we are collecting that data, if we're eliciting youth voice, it sits with us to go, well, how are we using it? How are we responding to it? That's the most effective way. We're also building better schools. We're building better programs. We're building a better future. We're not helping or supporting anyone by not opening that up. And it doesn't have to be more work it's just a different approach.
Yeah, and I think it's providing multiple ways for student voice to be collected. Just like we don't collect data only from test scores, there's other ways that we can collect data from young people. And maybe it is small discussion groups, maybe it is through written responses or online forms or surveys or whatever it might be. But we need to be doing a range of different things to collect student voice. So it's not just those students that are maybe the ones that really do have that self-drive to put themselves forward and be heard, so that we're hearing from everyone.
And I just want to point out, like, we're probably referencing quite large examples of student voice, and it can happen in really small ways as well, in schools and in programs and at home. I know Sky and I were speaking last week we're working on a parent project, and one of the activities that we were providing.
That sure is.
Time parent project.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. But one of the activities that we were sharing with parents was to sit and elicit from young people in their homes what their special activity is with their parents. So to ask them, what is your favorite thing to do with mum? Or what is your favorite thing to do with auntie? Or what is your favorite thing to do with this safe person in our life? And find out what it is that they're valuing, what it is that they're loving. That is collecting student voice. And then it's what we do with it, putting it into practice, making more time and more opportunities to be doing that with that young person. You know,
And I guess probably one of the biggest takeaways from this is that if we value student voice, and I think if you are an educator, if you're a program facilitator, if you're someone who runs a not-for-profit, you're someone who values student voice, right? You value the voice of young people. So what we need to do moving forward is make sure that when we are eliciting student voice, when we are collecting, collating and using and amplifying student voice, that we're doing that in a way that is really meaningful, and we're moving away from tokenistic tick-a-box outcomes that say, tick, student voice collected, and we're actively working with and alongside and for our young people.
Away from performative to informative.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, and make space to ask open questions, listen to the answers, and see how we can let that inform our direction.
We will see you next week.
Yeehaw.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Thanks so much for tuning into Podclass. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would adore it if you could go on to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a review. 5 stars would be lovely. We would love to get this podcast into as many ears as possible so we can help and support as many people as possible who help young people. And if you're not already doing so, please go along to Instagram and follow us at podclass.aus.